Hi guys, so something a little bit different today. I don't just make car seats, I also do other things. This is a rocking chair. Now the owner of the rocking chair actually made this, he's made quite a few now, and he's had quite a few cushions made for them, or a cushion made for each one that he's made, and he's not been happy with the cushions. The issue is, I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll get one of the cushions because he brought one in, and I'll tell you the issue that he has with them and why he's got that issue with them. So I'm sure you can see this here. It's obviously worse at this point here than it is here, but you've still got the same issue. The cover isn't right, and he's not very happy with that, and I don't blame him. Now the reason this happens is when you make a curved cushion like this, you need to stretch the face of the cushion a hell of a lot. Probably from this point here to the top we're fine, we don't need to stretch, but from here all the way to probably here needs to be stretched. It needs to be stretched quite a lot. And I also think all this wrinkle here at the front, the shape is, it's probably not perfect. It's probably not been patterned completely correctly, and the shape isn't right. Now he wants to see if I can sort this out as well, so I will see what I can do. Yeah, so I'll probably have to unpick the whole of this face, stretch it in as much as I can, and then see what happens. But there's a hell of a lot of fabric here, a hell of a lot more than there should be. So that's how much needs to be stretched out. In fact, probably a little bit more needs to be stretched out. I know it seems a little bit strange that you make something a certain size and you end up with this. Yeah, that's what happens on curves. On internal curves anyway. Internal curves need a heavy stretch put in them to stop this happening. I'll remove this cushion. I will pattern the shape of the rocking chair. I think also the foam doesn't have much shape to it either, so the foam needs to be shaped, so it needs to fit this curve, not be a flat piece of foam and hope that the cover actually makes the foam curve, because it's never going to do it. One's always going to be fighting against the other. First job, pattern the profile of the seat, take the measurement of the width, marking where the velcros go, and then I will cut the foam. That's the profile now on the packing plastic, but the profile isn't quite right. Because this line is the actual side rails of the rocking chair, the slats are a little bit lower into the rocking chair by about 3/8 of an inch. So I need to mark 3/8 of an inch on the end of this line here, and then redraw this profile in and then extend it out 3 inches, and that will give me the depth of the cushion. Obviously that's then the pattern for the side of the cushion. I've also got the measurement of the foam, the width wise. Now the owner supplied the fabric. I don't know what fabric it is yet. I haven't unrolled it to find out. I don't know how much stretch is in it. I don't know what it is made of. So that's the profile now drawn out. What I need to do, I need to have a quick measure. I need to measure the distance along here. I'll measure the distance along here. So obviously there'll be different lengths because obviously the radius changes. That'll just give me an idea of how much foam I'm going to cut. Now I'm going to overcut the foam. I can always trim it down later, and I need to now make the foam this shape. Now there's two ways of doing this. I can laminate, so I can put 3 layers of 1-inch foam onto the seat, glue them together, and that will hold that shape. Or I can curve cut a 3-inch piece of foam and then glue all the curves together. That'll give me the curve. I'm going to do a mixture of both. So I'm going to use 2-inch foam. I'm going to curve cut the 2-inch foam only from this point and this point here. I'm going to leave this bit here straight and this bit here straight. From these points here I've got marked on. I'm just going to curve cut this bit here, and then once I've got the curve cut, I'll lay it onto the rocking chair, and then I'll glue a 1-inch foam onto that. That'll hold the curves together as well as holding the curve in shape as well. Now I need to work out the difference between this line, the longer line, and the short line. Whatever the difference is, I need to remove that in the curves and work out how many I'm going to put in. $29.75. That's so there is 5¼ inches difference in that. I'm just going to call it 5 just to make life a bit easier. If I do my curves at 1/2 inches, that's 10. Now I need to measure this distance here to tell me how much foam I'm going to need. So it's 58 inches. Right, so I'll cut the foam at 60 inches by 23 wide, and then we can start the curving. I've now got the foam cut to size, so I've got my 60 inches. I added the 2 inches on, so 1 inch each end, and I cut it to 23 inch wide. Now I'm going to do 1/2 inch curves. I'm going to do 10 of them. So I need to mark 10 inches from one end and then start the first one. So that'll be my first one. So if I'm going to do 35, mark my 35 inches. 5. So if I do my first one at 3 inches, 1/2 inch, 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 3 inches, 1/2 inch. That's all the lines drawn in. I need to now cut little V's out. Now I'm not going to go all the way through the foam, obviously. I don't want to go, but I want to go at least 1 inch down. So that's the curves cut. I've slightly overcut these. I could have done with cutting them a little bit narrower, but it is what it is. Once I put it onto the rocking chair and glue the 1 inch onto the top of it, it'll just hold it into place. I don't need to, if I was going to glue all these together, and you see how tight it is now, I can almost get a circle out of that, which is obviously way too much, but it doesn't matter, because obviously once I glue the 1 inch on, it'll not make any difference. That should now hold that shape. It might just sag a little bit when I take it off, but it won't sag that much. I'm going to leave that for about 5-10 minutes, just let the glue go off properly before I release it. So that's the foam cut. What I need to do next, obviously, is to make the cover. Cover is just a series of rectangles, really. But I need to measure the pattern again, because the face rectangle, the face piece, is going to go up over the face and wrap around partially around the back. So I need to measure the distance. Now I'm going to overcut it, and I can always trim it off once I've got it all stitched together. I can cut to the seam where I need to cut it, and then we'll be fine. Rather than trying to be super accurate and get everything in the correct position, it's just easier to just make things a little bit bigger and then cut them in afterwards. I've now got all the pieces cut out apart from the side border. I've foamed back the face. I've drawn the lines for stitching the flutes on. What I'm going to do first, before I stitch flutes on that, is I have the two back pieces that need to be joined with a zip. I'll put the zip into those. I'll attach the Velcro, because it needs two pieces of Velcro put on as well in very specific places. So I'll attach those, and then I have a flap. So we have a flap here that goes on the bottom that attaches to a piece of Velcro underneath here. So I need to attach Velcro to that as well. So I'll do all those little bits. I'm going to use seaming tape to actually attach the Velcro and the zip, just so everything's in the correct position. I don't want things to move while I'm sewing them. So that's the orientation correct for those two pieces, and the zip's going to go in the centre here. So the zips are number 5 continuous coil zip. You cut it to length, it comes on massive rolls, obviously with it being continuous coil, but you can buy it in whatever length you want, and then cut it down to size. So I'm now going to sew these two pieces of zip together. Once I've sewn them together, I will put a top stitch along here, so we're like that. So that's the two pieces now zipped together. The next thing I need to do is to mark on where the Velcro goes, sew that on, and that will be the back done effectively. After that I'll do the fluted stitching. As you can hear, it's in the right place. Yep, that's spot on. So I'll sew that on now. You don't need to see me do that. I've just sewn a piece of Velcro onto a flap, exactly the same thing. I'll come back to you when it's done, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to place it on the seat again and just make sure that this is absolutely correct for where I'm going to sew the flapping, because the flap has to be sewn in, because this flap goes under here like this. And needs to be sewn into the bottom of the cover, so I'm just going to make sure it's in the correct position. I may have to trim the flap down a bit. I did make it over width, so that I could cut it down if I needed to. Always better to make things slightly bigger, especially things like that, just because you can always trim bits off it. You can't really add things on, and making it too short means you've got to remake it again. So for the sake of a couple of inches of fabric, always better to do it like that. That's done. So now for sewing the flutes. I've sewn loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of flutes onto fabric. Should I film it? Should I not? I don't know. What do you think? If you want me to film it, hit that like button. If you don't want me to film it, subscribe. So that's all the flutes now stitched into this. So next job is to cut the side borders and stitch everything together. Effectively it's only 4 pieces that need to go together: front, 2 sides and a back. It is lunchtime now. I'm going to have some lunch and then I'll cut the side borders and sew everything together after lunch. And believe it or not, I've not yet sat in this rocking chair. I've had this chair in for about 2 weeks now and I haven't sat in it yet. Does it look comfortable? I don't know whether it looks comfortable or not. Maybe a little bit too curved for me, but it may be absolutely amazing. It may be the best rocking chair in the world. Who knows? It actually looks pretty cool. Having one of these in your house would look pretty cool. If you're interested in buying one, I'm sure the guy who makes them would sell them. If you are interested, what I'll do is, if you get in touch with me, I'll get in touch with the guy and see if he's willing to sell any. If he is, then you've got a rocking chair you can buy. Right, I've partially sewn in this side border on just this side, just to see how it was. Now, like I said early in the video about having to stretch in this, I did have to stretch it, but it's not a massive amount, but it was still stretched in, only to about here. This bit here didn't need stretching, but the main curve needed stretching all the way. I'm fine with the top, so the top needs nothing trimming off it. But what I need to do now is to walk this part around to this line that I've got here. I've got a little mark where the end of the pattern, or where the pattern told me the seam needs to be for this part here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this off the form in a minute. I'll walk this around, so that just means holding it in place. I'll pin it, I'll walk it around, move the pins till I get to where this line comes here. I'll mark it, I'll not trim it off, because I don't want to trim it off too short, because walking around isn't exact. It's pretty close, but it's not always exact. But I'll mark it on here. I will sew the back to the top part of the face, because that is correct. That all lines up absolutely perfectly. and then I'll sew the opposite side in at the same point I've got here, and then when I know everything is correct, I'll sew the rest together. So yeah, we're not looking too bad at the minute, you can see. Obviously when the border is sewn in properly and we're tight to the bottom, there won't be any wrinkles in the border. It's very hard to show you at the minute how it will look, but it will look a little bit like that. So you'll see all these wrinkles on the side will completely disappear, and that'll be pulled taut, hopefully. The form is cut a little bit oversized on the width and a little bit oversized on the length, so that will compress when the cover's on. It will push against the cover and make everything tight, but I think I might have fun stuff in it. So I'm pinning it where the actual stitching would be. So after walking that in, it looks like I don't have to trim anything off anyway. It looks like it's exact, which I'm surprised with. I did add an inch to each end, but that was actually spot on. So I'll sew the back to this now, and then I'll just sew the borders in, and that'll be done. So where's the back? Back is here. So I'm not going to put seaming tape on this to join it together. I will on the top, because I think the top is spot on, but on the bottom I may have to take it off, and having seaming tape doesn't always help. So I'll just sew this in as normal without any seaming tape, and then I'll sew the back in, or the top part in of the face to the back, if you know what I mean. Like I said earlier about adding fabric on, you can never remove it, or you can never add, well you can add more, but it looks stupid having an extra seam in there because you've cut things short. Always looks a little bit obviously daft, and obviously a mistake. Having a little strip of fabric in somewhere is obviously very wrong, so always add more. You can always remove it later if you need to. This time I didn't need to. So the first side went in really well. Oh, you dickhead. So I'm going to have to unpick this little tiny bit here where the zip is. The zip's opened up a little bit as I was sewing it. I should have locked it off first before I stitched that in. Not a major problem. I'll just unpick probably this much here, and just so I can get the slider out, put the slider back in, and then I will lock that over just with a back tack, and then I'll sew that bit back in. These things happen. Alternatively, I could just put the slider in the opposite side, which I'm gonna do. Just makes life a little bit easier. Take the slider off, put the slider in the opposite way, and then I'll stitch that bit up. So I'll just go and sew this bit together now, so it doesn't open up when I'm sewing the other side. So that zip is now locked off, it won't open up now. I don't think you can see the line here, so that's my mark and that's my seam. So we're lining up pretty spot on the back part. And my second mark, so we have a mark here, and that lines up with the last stitch flute. Well, that's absolutely perfect so far. So both borders went in really nicely. Sometimes when you've got a massive curve like this, it's quite easy to get them misaligned, but that went better than expected really. Sometimes you've got to unpick and just readjust, but yeah, I'm happy at last. I will put the rocking chair out of the way, I'll get the foam and I will stuff this cushion now. It's going to be a bit of a fight, it's quite a big cushion to get into a small zip, but I'm going to spray the foam with silicone spray. That will just help the foam slide a little bit better into the cover. Now we're going to be fighting. That's half of it in. That's the easy bit. I'll screw this up as much as I can and try and get it in here. Oh, bollocks! Right, take this out and start again. So I've just popped a seam though, the seam where the zip was, the one that I said I was going to restitch. Right, it'll only take me a couple of minutes to re-sew that together. So I've strengthened both ends of the zip just in case. I don't want to do this a third time. Yay! We just need to adjust the cushion. I'm just making sure now it's all even. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a steam, just help the cover settle a bit on the foam. There we go, that's done. So I just need to ring the customer, let him know he's ready to collect, and another job off the list. So I'm not sure whether the customer, I know he made this rocking chair himself, whether he's selling them or not. He might be. If he is, I will leave a link in the description, let you know, and you may be able to buy one. So if you enjoyed that video, give it the old thumbs up, and I hope to see you again. Thanks for watching. Bye.